If you are asked to graph y equals the absolute value of x, start by plugging in values for x. If x is a -4, the absolute value of a -4 is a +4. When x is a -3, the absolute value of a -3 is a +3. When x is -2, we get 2. The absolute value of a -1 is 1. The absolute value of 0 is 0. The absolute value of a +1 is 1. Absolute value of 2 is 2. Absolute value of 3 is 3. So when we plot these points, when x is a -4, y is a +4. When x is a -3, y is a +3. X is -2, y is +2. -1, 1. 0, 0. 1, 1. And so forth. So as you can see, we're getting a V-shaped graph. When you graph y equals the absolute value of x plus 3, treat this absolute value as you would a parentheses. So you'll do what's inside of the absolute value first, then take the absolute value. So -4 plus 3 is a -1. The absolute value of a -1 is 1. -3 plus 3 is 0. -2 plus 3 is 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1. We'll get a 2, a 3, 4, and 5. Of course, you can pick more negative values to get things to shift a bit, but when we are at -4, we are at +1 for y. At -3, we get a 0. At -2, we get a 1. When x is -1, y becomes 2. When x is 0, y is 3. When x is 1, y is 4. And we can see where this is going. This looks very similar to what we saw just a moment ago, only this v is now shifted over. So once you're familiar with how the absolute value function works, it's possible to use a graphing calculator or an online graphing calculator to verify your work. Please make sure you understand the underlying function and how it operates before you use the graphing calculator. To graph the absolute value on a graphing calculator, it's always a good idea to first check and make sure that your stats plot is clear. So I hit second stats plot, we want to make sure that they are off. And then we click on the y equals button, and absolute value is located under math and over to number. And number 1 is absolute value, so if you press enter, we want to show initially the absolute value of x, so we grab our xt theta n, close our parentheses, and press enter. And then it's a good idea to hit graph. If you don't get a graph that looks quite right, you can do a zoom standard, which is 6. And you're seeing something similar to what we saw in the very first example. Let's look at the second example here. Y equals, we'll arrow down 1, math, over to number, absolute value. We want x plus 3 this time, so click on x, plus sign, 3, close the parentheses, click graph. And we can see the two graphs are very similar to each other. They're called a family of graphs, where the y equals the absolute value of x is the parent, and the y equals the absolute value of x plus 3 is a child function.